Right. So, Michal, thank you again for joining. It's a pleasure to have you on Coffee Road podcast. Michal is the founder of Standart Magazine. I'm sure that he's well known within the specialty coffee community. And as I said, he's today's guest. So, welcome, Michal.
Thank you, Bella, for having me. So you do a great job with your podcast, and I'm proud to join.
So, but maybe there might be some listeners who've never encountered Standart Magazine, or maybe they had, but they've never actually seen you. So could you just introduce yourself, tell us a bit more about how you started with specialty coffee?
Sure. So my name is Michal. I'm based in a small town in Slovakia called Nitra. I'm traveling between Prague and Nitra, so those are my two bases. As a team, we are fully remote, so it doesn't really matter where I am physically. We are spread all over the world. And I run a print magazine about specialty coffee called Standart. Essentially, there's a number of ways how I got into specialty coffee. The first is that I really liked hanging around in cafes as a young adult. Mainly to skip school and to be in a nice place filled with interesting people and caffeine. But then at some point I realized that coffee can actually taste like something, which felt surprising to me, because I always thought coffee is just a brown solution that wakes you up in the morning. But then I realized that there's a whole world to it. So I began getting deeper and deeper down into the rabbit hole of coffee. And I guess I wanted to find my way, how I can become a part of the community of the coffee industry. So I played with a number of things. Some worked out, some did not, but here I am today.
Was it difficult? I suppose, was it in the Slovakia when you first encountered specialty coffee, and was it difficult back then to actually find it somewhere?
My first encounter was actually in Prague, and it was a cafe by Double Shot Roastery called Michal Molcan in Prague, and I remember the first time I had a specialty espresso. It was an Ethiopian. It was Ethiopian coffee from Yirgacheffe, and they had these at that time. They had these beautiful, like, thick cups for espresso at Double Shot. And first, that was the first surprising thing. Like, these are so different espresso cups, and it just somehow felt very nicely to drink out of them. So the first sensory experience was the smell. Like, oh wow, this smells so different from the instant coffee I had at home. The second was, like, as I started drinking, like, this cup, like, it just felt so great. And then the taste, it was, and I'm not exaggerating, it felt like a slap on my face. It felt, wow, what is this? It was incredible. And then, of course, like, all the other aspects, the hospitality, the great atmosphere in the cafe, and how it all came together, it made the experience really memorable. I remember the table I was sitting at. I remember, like, the interior, everything. Great experience.
Michal Molcan, it's a nice coffee shop, and coincidentally, the first specialty coffee that I ever tasted was also from Double Shot Roastery, but it was in Brno, in the coffee shop called Mite, which is still open.
Sure.
And my first one was Americano, and it was pretty much similar experience. I was just like, what's that? It tastes so different compared to this instant coffee that I was drinking at that time.
Yes.
And yeah, as you said, here we are now. But so you started the Standart Magazine, which you've mentioned, and so back in 2015, when was the first issue came out, what do you have envisioned for this whole project?
Yes, so it started with my personal ambition to do my own project, to do my own thing. I had a lot of inspiration in my family, a lot of inspiration from my peers, my friends who started their own businesses and projects. I was 17, 18 at the university at high school and then later on at the university when I started doing coffee festivals in Bratislava, in Vienna, and in Prague.
Okay.
And it was great fun. I loved doing it. I got to meet so many interesting people and the whole community. But then I realized that there's something I'm missing when the event ends. And what I was missing is sort of a continuity of the product I was building, the continuity of the project and the physical tangibility of the product. It's an event, it's an experience, and the quote unquote only thing I got after the event was great photographs and reviews and memories and all that, but I couldn't really touch the result of my work. And as I was getting deeper and deeper into coffee, I wanted to be a part of the industry. I liked doing events. It was not really, it was a thing that didn't need a lot of capital investments, like organizing an event with sponsors and tickets. I didn't need a lot of capital from investors or from anyone. And as I was thinking about the next step for my journey, I thought of, well, maybe a cafe or a roastery. But then I hit two major bottlenecks. The number one was that I would probably be a very shitty barista, and not. I wasn't sure how competent I could be as a cafe manager and cafe owner. It's a very difficult task. And running a roastery was, well, honestly, an expensive thing to do, especially back in 2014, 2015. And there were already many amazing roasters around me, and I didn't want to start small, start as a kid, and fight a lot of competition. So I thought of some other ways, and I really liked reading good quality magazines like New Yorker or Monocle. And I thought that a good quality magazine done in a sort of a specialty level with specialty standards, like good quality social responsibility, quality of the process of preparation and all of that. I thought a publication like that could be received well in the coffee industry, and not only in Slovakia and Czech Republic, but also globally.
Well, we are all very glad that you've chosen to do the magazine. But you mentioned that you would be a shit barista. Have you actually tried it ever? Or have you worked in a cafe?
When we started the magazine back in, so the first issue came out in 2015, but I started the company in 2014, and it took a couple months to actually create the first issue. So I started the company in 2014, and one of the first activities we did with the name Standart was a pop-up brew bar at a music festival. And we didn't have the magazine at that time. We only had the name, the logo, and some made-up business cards. And as a sort of a marketing exercise, we did this pop-up brew bar. And I was brewing coffee with my colleagues, friends at that time. At this festival, and it was an incredible experience. It was what I loved about it was the immediate feedback environment. Like you saw right away what people thought about like service, the conversation we had, and also about the taste. And I loved being in the immediate feedback environment. That's the connection with the customer was fairly short, but I was able to see the whole journey of the customer experience. So yeah, that was I guess my first experience as a barista. I didn't continue after that, but I enjoyed it very very much. The few brew bars we did.
That's interesting because one of the reasons why I started the podcast, because I also wanted to be part of the industry, but I actually work as a barista and I was very bad one, so I didn't even consider opening a coffee shop or anything like that. 'Cause nobody would love the coffee.
You're probably too hard on yourself.
Anyway, just to follow up on, well, maybe, but still, I didn't enjoy it that much. I love brewing coffee for myself and for my partner, but I was quite stressed in the shop, to be honest. Anyway, I wanted to ask you on the Standart website, you write that it sounded all ridiculous just to say that you are publishing an independent print magazine about specialty coffee culture. And I wanted to ask you why it sounded so ridiculous back then, and how it sounds now when you say to someone.
Well, to start with your second question, it still sounds exactly the same ridiculous as it sounded back in 2014 and 15. I suppose the reason is that it's just such a specific product for such a specific community out there, which is so different, a business so different from what many people around me are doing. So when I was explaining my grandmother or rest of my family what I was doing, and it felt quite difficult to explain that, well, I only have my computer, we have a warehouse in Berlin, a printer in Tokyo. As a team of as a team at Standard, we are like 10 people in 7 countries and 6 time zones, and the product we are all doing together is about like good quality coffee, and it's all in print. So it all sounded as I guess for many people it was just difficult to understand, like, how can this become an actual business? Like, how can you do this for a living? And I'm really excited that I can do it for a living.
I understand it's very, very niche, but how people are reacting, because I'm sure that by now the magazine, it's well known in the community. So at the beginning, was it different when you said somebody, what are you doing? Somebody from the community about the Standard, were directions a bit different?
Yes, well, the word niche is important. And this is I find it one of the greatest advantages of the world we live in today. Objectively, world in a quite bad shape with the events that happened over the last 3 years. But one of the upsides of the world we live in today is the power of internet and the power of human connection, and how you're able to like take a very niche thing for a niche audience all over the planet and go deeper and do it, which is something that would be far more difficult to do 20, 30, 50 years ago. Would be impossible. So the word niche and the fact that you can make your own project out of a niche product, niche community is awesome. And the reaction of the people in the beginning the beginnings were exceptionally positive. A great thing was that people were actually buying the magazine, which was necessary for us to survive as a business and to pay our initial bills. Like, we had no capital from investors, no bank loans, and nothing. Like, it was very, very bootstrapped business, and still is. So the publication was well received in the beginning. We had launch parties at the Barn in Berlin, at Profrog in London, and essentially all of our expenses were covered by these famous coffee institutions. So we got a lot of practical good feedback from people in terms of people paying for the magazine and helping out with venues for events, launch parties. But we also got a lot of emotional good emotional feedback in the beginning. Like people seem to have believed in what we were doing, liked what we were doing. So the encouragement to carry on and continue building a product, building a magazine like this was foundational for us. It felt great.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what people were appreciating the most when you started, when it first came out?
That's a good question. I suppose the number one thing I've heard in the early days was that, oh, great, a coffee magazine that I can actually read. And this is something we keep hearing today as well, that you are a publication that you can actually read from cover to cover, because in the publishing world, in the world of magazines, so many publications are financed by ads. So half of the content is really like paid articles and so like advertising from all kinds of companies. And the content that is there, which is often like less than the 50% of the page count, is in many cases not really written well, because they don't invest as much into the quality of contributors. The aesthetics are, well, dubious in many industries outside of coffee. It's really not just about coffee and coffee magazines out there. So I guess it's simply difficult to run a print magazine these days. I'm glad to hear that when I ask about, well, what do you appreciate about Standart the most, is the fact that it's entertaining, it's insightful, it covers coffee from not only the brewing angle and the actual like end product, the beverage or the bean, but all of these surrounding topics, all of the interconnections, because coffee is just incredibly complex.
I love the complexity as well, and I really value the independence of the magazine, that it solely relies on the readers. I think that's a huge thing as well. Was it the goal from the beginning?
It was. In the early days, I thought it's essential for us, not only as a publication, but as an actual business, to diversify the revenue streams. So we have some partnerships in the magazine with just a couple brands in every issue, and we are really fortunate to be in the position where we can literally pick just the companies we want to work with, which gives us a lot of freedom and an opportunity to work the best of the best. But the number one pillar was the subscription model, and to have the magazine financed by the readers of the magazine. That gave us a lot of freedom in the early days, because we were not reliant of one source of income, like 4 thick wallets of big corporations paying for ads, and then suddenly when a global pandemic would hit, they would say that, oh, we don't have enough marketing budget right now, and we would have a major problem to deal with. But when we have the reader at the number one position, with the way how we put the magazine, like it is for the reader, like we want for people to be able to actually read the magazine. So number one thing is that we need to make it interesting, we need to make it entertaining, we need to make it look great, we need to select topics that will resonate well with the industry. And second of all, we want our readers to pay for the content, because that way we don't need to rely on big brands, but we are in direct contact with our readers. We don't really do a lot of distribution of the magazine, so all of our distribution is direct to reader, which is, well, to put it this way, we literally know where our readers live. So we get a lot of feedback to the topics we cover in the magazine, to the style of writing, to the quality of aesthetics. So there's a lot of connection and communication between us and our readers, which is again something very different from the magazine industry at large, because it's, in so many cases, it relies on like B2B distribution with newsstands and bookstores and magazine stores. And they don't really control the chain. They don't really know who their readers are. They're not in touch with them. There is someone in between. So the fact that we were able to like tweak this supply chain to our now advantage has always been essential for us.
By the way, who are your readers? I'm sure there are different groups, but if you would just describe who the reader of Standart Magazine is, who would that be?
It's a combination of two groups of people. Both of them presumably love coffee and coffee culture. So one is a group made out of coffee professionals, so people who work in the industry, either as baristas, roasters, waiters, in any kind of position within the industry, so professionals. And the second group are the amateurs, the enthusiasts, people who are not involved with coffee in a professional level, but they love to play around with E60 at home. They bought a Commandante grinder for themselves for Christmas, and so people who are interested in coffee, but not in a professional level, but on their own. So these two groups combined form the core audience of the magazine. And for this audience, the content we have in the magazine is kind of a mixture of more difficult and hard-hitting topics, combined with stories of people who are in the industry, or stories of people who drink coffee but are musicians or teachers or activists, like for example in our Meet Your Guests section. But ultimately, it all comes down to the core idea of Standart as a publication, which is to become this perfect personification of your favorite cafe, which is the same for professionals and home coffee enthusiasts. And the idea of the perfect personification of your favorite cafe is the same as you walk into the Michal Molcan that we talked about in the beginning of the podcast. When you walk in, you see the coffee machine, you see the grinders, you see the scales, and all the technicalities, all the machinery, the sort of a nerdy part of the industry. But then you also see the baristas, the waiters, the waitresses inside of the cafe, brewing coffee, talking to people, serving coffee. So the very important human elements of the cafe. Then you have the actual product, the coffee beans. So things related to the roastery, things related to coffee production, things related to like sensoric experience out of the coffee, problems related to coffee production. But then in this cafe, you also have the interior design. You have the tables, you have chairs, you have some form of lighting inside. You can hear music. You can see artwork on the wall. And last but not least, you see people inside. People drinking coffee, people talking to one another. Some of them are also coffee professionals, but many of them are not. Many of them are, again, business people, teachers, people from all over the planet, from different kinds of backgrounds, sitting there all together in one cafe, having a great time. So this cafe has all of these layers, ranging from the technicalities, the machine part, through humans, the professionals preparing the coffee, through the bean itself, through the the design, the architecture of the space, to the drinkers, people inside of the cafe. So it has all of these layers, and the goal of Standart is to encapsulate all of these layers in a beautiful print publication and deliver it to our readers every quarter.
I never thought about it this way, but it actually makes sense that everything, as what you describe, is there in the magazine. Actually, it's a good representation, truly. I was going to ask what made the Standart so successful, or what it makes so successful. But actually, I'm going to change that question a little bit and ask you what aspect of the Standart Magazine are you the most proud of? What are you proud of about it?
The number one thing that comes to mind is the team. It's at the end of the day, the magazine is the results of our work. Like, we do it every quarter. It's beautiful. We try to be, every issue we are trying to be like a tiny bit better. Every issue we want to be the best issue yet. But at the end of the day, the core product of Standart is Standart as a company, the team who makes the magazine. And this is something I'm proud of the most, that at this point, I'm the person in charge of the company. I'm the editor-in-chief. But for every essential aspect of Standart as a business, from magazine production through customer care, through marketing, through finance, and all the other aspects, we have someone in the team who's just far better at that part of Standart than I could ever be. And I'm the one in the middle, trying to navigate Standart to go in a certain direction. But the team we have right now, and how it came out, how it works together, is something I'm incredibly proud of. It's still just a start. It's building a team, growing the team, and improving the way how we work together is a never-ending process. So it's not like, okay, so now I'm proud of the team. What's next? That part is finished. It'll never be finished. But that's something I'm proud of the most.
I see. It's great. Anyway, just to follow up about the Standart Magazine, how I'm sure that the listeners who knows it, they know that it has beautiful visual side. It looks just beautifully. And I remember the first time I saw it, I actually don't know where it was. I believe it was probably in Mitte, like in the coffee shop in Brno. But I still remember to this day seeing it and thinking, first of all, I thought it's a book because it was so thick and it's looking really huge. But at the same time, I was just thinking, what's that beautiful piece of book? And then I opened it and it was it was really nice. And so how important is that? How important for you is this visual side? Because everything about your product, even the Instagram, your pictures and everything, it looks so beautiful.
The aesthetics of Standart is one of the fundamental part of what we do, because it's, at the end of the day, it's the first point of contact with a potential reader or someone visiting a cafe, a passerby seeing the magazine on the shelf or in someone's table. To be able to attract attention and to communicate in a split second that we are a coffee publication. It's all about coffee, diverse set of human experiences and stories, and it's probably quite different from many other magazines out there with its format, the size, and everything. To be able to communicate all of this in less than a second when you're scrolling on Instagram or when you're seeing an ad somewhere or seeing a post, social media or an email newsletter, it's crucial. And once we get the attention, once we communicate some of our values through our aesthetics, then we can continue. Then you open the we got your attention, so you open the magazine, and you see that okay, so it's not only on the surface. It's not only that we made the cover exciting and interesting to get your attention, but the rest of it, it's just we filled out the pages with something to just fill out the pages. No, it's the quality of photographs and illustration is something that help elevate the writing and the points of the articles, the insights written in the articles to next level, to create something that is appealing for people to read. And also it's, I guess, in a way, different and unique. We have in our team, we have a number of people responsible for different parts of the production process. The aesthetics part start with our creative director, Kirill, and graphic designer, Nastya. And they make the decisions about the way how the graphic design is created, the way how the layout is set, the way what kind of articles, what kind of artwork accompany which article. And they are in a difficult position because it's so easy to think of I guess, obvious coffee imagery or obvious coffee illustrations, such as pouring milk to a cup, or coffee cherries, and all of these. I like to call it Instagram aesthetics, like cafes with brick walls and exposed light bulbs and tattooed barista with all of that. It could be easy to fall into that trap to just, oh well, let's just use this like coffee Instagram aesthetics throughout the magazine, but it would get boring so quickly. It's boring already, and it's certainly not representative of the industry at large, of the coffee community. So the quality of the aesthetics, the objective quality of the aesthetics, but at the same time, the concept and the narrative of the photo shoots and the illustrations is very important for the quality of reading of the magazine.
It's very interesting to hear the way you are thinking about it, because from my experience, or at least from my point of view, the visual storytelling, the aesthetics, it is a very important part of it. And you are telling stories through the pictures, and which are not stereotypical representation of the coffee industry or the coffee, the idea of the specialty coffee shops and everything. So it's great. And I still, as I said, I remember it, like I've seen it, and I really had the urge to take the magazine and start going through it. And since then, every time I'm in a coffee shop, and sometimes, they have the Standart magazines there on the shelves or somewhere, and I still have the urge just to take it to my hands and look at it, because it is very aesthetically pleasing, and it's just a pleasure going through it. I'm going to conclude this first half of the interview, which is about Standart in general. And so Standart magazine is about coffee culture, but I wanted to ask you how it fits to the coffee culture, and what's the role of the magazine in it now?
I would say it fits into the culture as a representation of it, and as a point of reference for many. And it serves an important, goal to educate, and at the same time entertain. Because on one side, we want to educate people working in the industry. We want to select topics that are perhaps not often discussed in the public arena, So we want to educate, but at the same time, we want to entertain and bring new people engaged with the coffee industry, with the specialty coffee community, and explore it. So it's not just a closed community of dudes clapping on each other's shoulders and very tightly knit. So the entertaining part is really to like celebrate the culture and show it to the world in an interesting and approachable way. So they pick up the magazine when they see it at the cafe. At that time, they might not be a professional or not even a home barista, but they see the publication. They see all the facets of the coffee industry. They read the stories of people, and they might say, "Oh, okay, well, I want to ask about this or that, the staff working in the cafe, because I'd like to learn more." So I suppose the role of standards in the coffee culture has become this point of reference in between the barista, the coffee producing, coffee preparing side of the coffee community, and the drinker, something that represents the industry in a best possible way, how we can represent it and be engaging and entertaining enough so it lures more people into it.
Is it challenging to try to balance these two groups and entertain them both?
Yes, but we are very selfish. We make the magazine just like we want to make it ourselves, just like we would like to read it ourselves. And I suppose you can never fit into everyone's taste buds. And anyone who tries that,
of course, that's not the goal, right?
Anyone who tries that, in most cases, fails, because trying to please everyone is just incredibly difficult and impossible. So we are quite selfish in what we want to see in the magazine and how we want the magazine to look like. And unfortunately, we see that there is quite a lot of people out there in the world who share the same taste, who share the same values as we do. So that part works out well.
You've just mentioned the values, and that serves nicely as a bridge to the second part of the interview. Again, from my point of view, Standart Magazine is heavily value-based. You really care about your values. You are trying to communicate them through the stories, through the articles, through everything that you do. So, and also on your website, you mentioned that you emphasize the human approach through all levels of the experience. So what does it actually mean? What we can see behind it?
Yes. So the question one would be, what is the standard experience? What are the parts of the experience? And second question, what's the what the human approach means, and then how you put it, like how these two come together. So for us, it of course starts with the publication. So we spoke a lot about the culture. We spoke a lot about the selection of topics. But at the end of the day, the magazine is really mostly about people and stories of people. So human approach to producing coffee, serving coffee, human problems, human accomplishments. So it's, I get so many times I get a question that, do you still have anything to write about? Like, it's issue number 29. It's an independent print magazine about specialty coffee. What is it that you can still write about? And yes, if we would be covering, I don't know, brewing techniques and varieties or roasting profiles only, we would probably run out of like interesting and entertaining topics very soon. But with people and with human stories, like it's endless, like it's bottomless, like the source of inspiration. So the human approach starts with the content selection and the way how we produce the content. then it comes down to the receiving of the magazine. We always ship it with a coffee sample from some of the best roasters in the world, and we always highlight the roaster of the coffee sample that we sent. We always try to highlight the coffee producer and put that coffee producer at the pedestal, at the number one point when talking about the coffee. We host short events at our Standart community platforms. We share the story behind the farm that made the coffee that we shipped with the magazine. And then it also comes down to the human approach to the way how we treat our readers. Anytime they have a question, anytime they have a problem, anything they want to talk to us about, which is customer care. We try to reply as quick as we can, as prompt as we can, because this is being a customer-centric business is oftentimes very overlooked by not only publications but by companies at large. And since we are a subscription-based company, the longevity of our readers, the quality of the relationship we build with our readers is heavily based on the foundational stones that we put under the relationship we have with our readers. So an exceptional level of quality in our customer care is just very important for our present, but also for our future. So the human approach is really, it comes down to content selection, to the way how we treat our customers, to the way how we express the story of the coffee that we ship, and then of course the team that we already spoke about. We are fully remote. We're 10 people living in 7 countries and 6 time zones, and we have a very frank, very honest way of working together. I would call it very human way of interacting with one another as colleagues. So yes, this human approach is important for us on many levels.
Just speaking about customers or your readers, do you have someone, or do you know some of your subscribers personally, or perhaps those who, or if there are some, they are with you since the beginning?
Yes, it's so precious to meet a subscriber in person. It was difficult during the heights of the pandemic when there were not a lot of coffee events. But as you asked the question, a specific memory came to mind from 3 months ago. At the end of 2022, I was in Tokyo in Japan at the SDHA coffee conference. It was a massive event, tens of thousands of people. And we run a Japanese version of the magazine since 2017. And I wasn't in Japan since the first day when we started. So we had a launch party at Blue Bottle back in 2017. And then we built an incredible team in Japan. But I wasn't in the country physically present during those 5 years. And when I came to Tokyo for the SCJ event, we had a booth at the event, and we got to talk to a lot of our partners and friends and subscribers. And it just that feeling of someone coming to you saying that, oh, I've been to your launch party in 2017 and I've been a loyal subscriber since, and I love this about Standart. I would love you to improve this about Standart, but generally I have just such a great relationship with you guys. That those kinds of conversations are just very precious and very productive, because you get a lot of feedback when you're talking to people, but they just feel awesome.
Must be very rewarding.
Yes,
as
rewarding
well.
is a good word. Yes.
You mentioned several times your team and that you are based in different time zones, in different cultures. Do you think that translates into the magazine? Because you do care about culture and sociality backgrounds of your readers, but also of the coffee production. So do you think that the fact that also your team is so multicultural that it translates into the actual experience?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say that there is a direct causality between the two. I would say overall diversity of content, diversity of stories, diversity of like humans we have in the magazine, we have in the team, is one of the fundamental values of Standard. And I don't mean that in a sort of a ethical or moralistical way that, oh, it's important to care about diversity because it's ESG and everything. It's often talked about in the world of the last couple of years. It's not really only about morality and ethics. Of course, being diverse is objectively good, but I'm very pragmatic about it. I feel it's simply better. It's simply more effective. It's more interesting. Like, would you like to read a magazine every quarter that has like Scandinavian cafes with like wood and brick walls and white tattooed baristas with beanie hats brewing V60s? First of all, it's wrong. It doesn't represent the coffee industry at all. It doesn't represent the world,
Yeah.
the human societies, the cultures at all. But it's also boring. Like it's not interesting. So diversity is one of our core values, not only from the moral side of things, but mainly it's because it's just more interesting for the readers. It's better for the world, and simply it's just the most effective way how to run a publication.
You also mentioned that one of your values of the Standart Magazine is empathy, and that translates into building bridges. So I have actually two questions. So first of all, do you think that coffee can help to build bridges within a society? And then I'll ask you the other question afterwards.
Yes, coffee had been building bridges and been a point of connection in societies for thousands of years. Coffee was a very important part of the London of old, the old coffee houses from the few centuries back, the Baghdad House of Wisdom in the Middle East, and the role that coffee played in diplomacy in many countries. It's just essential. It's an incredibly powerful way of an incredibly powerful connector between human beings and cultures around the world, and have been so for thousands of years, hundreds of years. So it certainly can be a connection. There's a lot of connections and a lot of bridges within the industry as well. But the problem is that these bridges are oftentimes too long and too shaky.
And by the way, it's one of the reasons that I hear very often from the people that I interview, that what brought them to the coffee or drew them to the coffee, that it was the fact that it creates a community around itself.
Mm-hmm.
And just speaking about the community, you have your own community, which is online, naturally. But why have you decided to do it, first of all, and how it communicates with the print magazine, which is lasting, it's something tangible, and then you have something, on the other hand, you have something not so tangible and online and remote?
There was a number of reasons behind building Standard community. For those who don't know, we created a platform for our readers, for our subscribers to connect, share topics, discuss ideas, and learn more about coffee and educate one another. Um, the main reason why we did it was to started with the need for a connection that we just talked about, because I felt that there is a lot of connection between us and our readers with our human approach, with us being a consumer centric business. We communicate a lot with our readers. We ask for feedback. We receive a lot of feedback. So the communication is two-way. So we talk to our readers and readers talk to us.
Yeah.
A great starting point. But then after a while, I realized that we were lucky to have so many interesting individuals reading the magazine from all parts of the world, from all parts of the industry, that it's such a shame that we can't really get them to meet one another and get them to talk to one another. Mm-hmm. So with our Standart community, we wanted to facilitate these connections and give a platform, build an infrastructure for our subscribers to learn from each other, to meet one another when they're from the same city or neighboring country. So because there's just so much learning potential in building bridges like that, building connections like that. And we don't want to interfere that much. Like, we don't want to engage in every conversation and create every conversation. We really want to be the facilitator of those conversations. And if it's online, doesn't really matter. Like, the whole world today is quite interconnected, and the offline and online experience is intertwined. And as a business, as our core product, we're very much offline. Like, it's a print magazine. You get coffee samples, they get delivered to your door. So the core experience is very much offline. But the online part is really about connection. It's really about connecting the readers with one another, and see what comes out of those connections.
It's great. By the way, if you don't have friends who love coffee as much as you do, or if you're just looking for new friends that love coffee, I think the Standart community, it's a place to be. You can find a lot of people there. So I invite you to join it if you like friends loving coffee. Or
that's a good tip. Yeah.
To carry on. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that I love about it. That you feel, that you are part of it, and you can meet so many interesting people there, or read many interesting thoughts, ideas. It's great.
We're still in the early phase. We're still just
to carry on.
Building it.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Yeah. But I appreciate the kind.
So you can get only better.
Hopefully, yes.
Anyway, I wanted to ask, because in Standart you focus a lot on social and environmental issues. I think that one of your articles about decolonization of coffee was even awarded by Sprudgie. Why these topics? Why is it important for Standart, first of all? And if yes, why?
It's important for, I believe, and we believe that these themes are important for the world and the coffee industry and the coffee community. And since we, as a magazine, want to be this perfect representation of the coffee community, attract the whole world to learning more about coffee in an educative and entertaining way, these topics naturally must be very important for us. And also, they're a source of a lot of inspirations, because in coffee, as with any other product or any other industry, you have a lot of beautiful things to write about, but you also have a lot of challenges, a lot of issues, a lot of problems. And the amount of those is huge. So it's also an almost endless source of inspiration for writing. So yes, themes of social responsibility and environmental issues are really at at the heart of what we publish in Standard.
Also, recently there is a criticism, perhaps sometimes, that these social responsibility or sustainability, they are buzzwords. And from your perspective, what can we do to ensure that they are real and not just fancy words that we say to make look ourselves better?
Yeah, I very much agree that terms like transparency and sustainability can be buzzwords that when you're a roaster and you build a website and you just put really random keywords like transparency, sustainability, direct trade, and without actually explaining what exactly you're doing about transparency and how exactly you're trading directly and what the percentage of your fee is traded directly, you know that these words just like attract attention of people. Similar to, I don't know, in 2016 and 17 when you were a tech startup and you said that blockchain or Bitcoin, investors started pouring money into your startup, and it didn't matter like what kind of industry you're in, what's your product, and how exactly you're utilizing blockchain. It was just a buzzword that you used. For us, sustainability, for example, is not the goal really, because it's the starting line. And I have a perhaps different.
Okay, let's
unpack that. If we break down the word sustainability, like sustainability to be able to sustain in business, for example, like that's an absolute necessity for any business, for any agricultural product, like to be able to sustain on this planet. So that's the fundament, that's the starting point. Like there is no way around sustainability. Like it must be, that's where you start. So it's not like, oh, let's try to achieve sustainability and yes, ticked, now we got this certificate or that certificate and we achieved sustainability. What's next? No, it's a never ending process. So the sustainability is really the starting point. To be able to sustain in business or in the world, in nature is crucial.
True. And I like what you mentioned, that it is the starting. It's not the goal; it's the starting point. I wish that there were more companies who would share this concept, this idea about it. But I want to go a little bit back what you said earlier, that there is a long and shaky bridge within coffee. But were you referring to something specific, like that there is a bridge between producers and producing and consuming countries, or was it something else?
Mostly about that, yes. If we change the wording from bridge to supply chain, yes, that supply chain is very long and very shaky, and the pillars are quite old.
Do you think that there will be a renovation of that bridge sometime?
Well, it better be if we want for coffee to sustain in this nature and on this planet. It's not an easy task. There is no silver bullet, and you see different like weak points on the bridge, but you can't really just take one and solve it, and that would like fix the whole bridge. No, you have to solve everything in certain order, like by priorities. But for the bridge to be actually renovated, you really need to see what can be fixed, and perhaps what bridges are better to be just completely teared down and built from scratch with different infrastructure, with different materials.
Do you think it is possible?
Well, anything is possible, but it comes down to
That's
how. I don't really have the answers. I suppose that there's no single individuals who has the answers, and it's also one thing to have the answers, and then also the drive, the competence, and the power to do something about them. But when we talk about supply chain and coffee production in the context of buzzwords like transparency and traceability and all that, and if we were to talk about what are the priorities, like what should we do as coffee consumers or coffee industry at large to help coffee producers to sustain in business and for coffee plants to sustain in nature? For me personally, three things come to mind. And I'll be very pragmatic about it. The first is money. The second is education. And the third is humility. Mm-hmm. People generally like to talk about things. We host events, we host congresses, we host symposias, and there's a lot of networking, a lot of handshakes, a lot of ideas sharing, which is awesome. It's an essential part to connect as human beings, to talk about the issues, to put them front and center. But as Joseph Brodsky from 90 Plus once said, and I just this idea just came to mind, that coffee was way too cheap for way too long. And this is something that we perhaps don't want to admit or don't want to talk about because money talk is often unpleasant. But if we are simply be willing to pay more for coffee and perhaps consume less in total quantities, while making sure that a fair cut of the price we're paying goes to people who deserve it the most, which is the coffee producers. And I'm not saying deserve, again, from a moral or ethical standpoint, like practically, like they deserve it the most because they are the most effective to make coffee better. Like, they produce it, for Christ's sake, they are making coffee. So investing into coffee farm, investing into building teams at farms will make all following parts of the supply chain better. So spending more for coffee and making sure more money gets to where it belongs is a very, very important starting point. Yeah, no, just to finish the part about money, education, and humility, the education is a natural extension of the money topic. It's great, but well, if the investments are spent wisely, and there's a lot of cross like country learning that producers can learn from each other. So facilitating education at the origin is crucial. So we're all in the same boat, and in most cases the coffee producers are fighting similar problems, similar issues, and a lot of learnings can happen from one another. In most cases, you don't really need to reinvent the wheel. So the education is really an integral part of making the coffee production better. And the third part, which is a necessary addition to the education part, is humility, and to constantly remind yourself that if you are a young professional from the Bay Area or from a big metropolitan city, it doesn't mean that you know better how to produce coffee, how to fix all the world's problems, how to change the supply chain. I remember a conversation we had with a bottle of wine with a coffee producer from India. It was at the World of Coffee in Milan in 2022. And before she got into producing coffee, she used to work really in a high end tech world. I think for Google or some other tech startup in London in the UK.
Uh-huh.
And after years being in this industry, she moved back to India and wanted to start producing coffee with her husband. And they had an approach of saying that, oh, well, we are from our country. We now moved back. We learned a lot from traveling around the world, from working in tech. We know how to operate processes and how to like approach problems and challenges. And of course, we can fix many of these issues that are people struggling with neighboring farms. So like, let's just do it. It's easy. And after a few months of like trying some fixes and thinking that we know better because we came from a big city from the West and we have all of these practices and way how to approach problems, they needed to really get back to the starting point and say that, well, actually, we know jack shit about producing coffee, and the fact that someone is not from the tech industry or someone does not have a high education that we have does not mean that they are worse at making coffee. So this like, humility and being really humble about where you're coming from and where you trying to do is really important for the education part. So it's really teaching, not preaching some narrative like I came from this university, I have this research in coffee, and you all need to follow my advice. And at the same time, I've never been to a farm, and I've never planted a seed in my life, and I'm trying to tell everyone how to fix everything. So money, education, and humility are, I guess, the first things that come to mind.
It all makes perfect sense, and you've got me actually now. You've got me thinking that we often speak about people in the West working with the coffee as coffee professionals, but we never say the same thing about coffee producers. Like somehow there's still idea that it is an unskilled labor, but at the same time they are experts and professionals in growing amazing coffee that we merely work with. So it starts with them, and maybe sometimes the language we use, the terms we use, they are quite revealing. They can be quite revealing.
Yep.
That's just one thought that I just have. Anyway, Michal, thank you. But I have one last question, which is, this podcast is called Coffee Heroes, and I wanted to ask you, who's your coffee hero?
Wow. I don't know. First thing that came to mind was the Marvel series. These movies where there is oftentimes not one heroes, but you have these like a number of superheroes like fighting together. So I can't really pick one hero out of all.
It's a good analogy.
We recently had a great interview with Carla Boza from El Salvador. She won the notable coffee producer Sprudgy Award, I think last year or the year before. And listening to her story and reading the interview we did with her was great to see the journey from school to coffee producing and to building on their heritage of producing coffee. And I think it was the same issue where we had an article about the need for having coffee producers put on the spotlight and to, in a way, treat them as superheroes, same as you have famous baseball players or NHL players on these like cards that kids trade and play with, because we put a lot of emphasis on the roaster of the coffee, like it's written on the label of the coffee roastery or the barista at the cafe, but really the producer, the name of the producer should be the same as like you have wine producers with their own name on the bottle, which I mean that could be a whole separate conversation about like wine and coffee being a wrong analogy, but treating coffee producers generally as the heroes and the ones at the front and center, and then everyone else follows. So to really change the order of priorities, that's something I find very important.
I couldn't agree more. That's part of the reason of this channel, just to give also to talk more about producers and the challenges which they are facing. So, Michal, thank you again. It was a pleasure to have you here speaking about Standart and allowing us to take a deeper look into behind the curtain of the Standart Magazine. It was very interesting. Also, if there is anyone who wants to become a subscriber or maybe find out about the Standart Magazine, where they should start?
They can start on our website. They can start on our social media profiles to learn more about what we do. We have a trial offer on the site where you can try Standart and see if it fits your reading habits and if it fits your taste before paying for the whole subscription. So the start is fairly very easy and non-committing. And I appreciate the invitation, and it felt great to talk about the story of Standart and go deeper into some of the topics that we touched on. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.